Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Creepy Mysteries. I'm super excited to start this journey as a new creator, and I really appreciate you being here. A huge thank you to everyone who has already supported me. It means the world. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help this channel grow. Your support and feedback keep me motivated, so drop a comment below and let me know what you think or what you'd like to see next. I used to work as a pizza delivery driver when I was in college. It wasn't a bad gig. Decent tips, flexible hours, and a lot of time driving around listening to music. But there's one delivery I'll never forget, and to this day I still don't have an explanation for what happened. It was a slow Thursday night, almost close to midnight, and I was about to clock out when we got one last order. My manager asked if I could take it since I lived in the same direction. I figured why not? One more delivery, one more tip. But right away something felt off. The address was in a part of town I didn't recognize, and when I punched it into my GPS, it came up blank. No results. I showed my manager and he just shrugged. Try looking it up on Google Maps, he suggested. I did, and this time, a pin dropped on a location about 20 minutes out of town, down a back road I had never driven before. The name listed on the order was just Mr. Nocturne. Weird, but I assumed it was some old guy who didn't know how to use online ordering properly. I grabbed the pizza and got in my car. The first 10 minutes were normal, just quiet, empty streets. But as I got closer, the road became more rural, with fewer streetlights and no houses in sight. My GPS kept telling me to turn onto a narrow dirt path that cut through a thick forest. At this point, I was getting seriously creeped out, but I had already come this far. I figured I'd just drop the pizza, get paid, and be on my way. As I drove down the path, I noticed something strange. There were no signs of life. No houses, no mailboxes, not even a driveway. Just trees stretching into the darkness. Finally, I saw it. A small, rundown house sitting in a clearing. The porch light was on, but the windows were completely covered by thick, black curtains. I parked, grabbed the pizza, and walked up to the door. There was no doorbell, just an old brass knocker. I knocked 3 times. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Finally, a faint, whispery voice crackled over what sounded like an old intercom speaker near the door. "Come inside, leave it on the table." That was an immediate red flag. Who the hell asked a delivery driver to come inside? I can just hand it to you here," I called back. Silence then, in the same breathy, unnatural voice. "Come inside. Leave it on the table." Every instinct told me to leave, but then I thought, what if this was just some really old person who couldn't walk to the door? Maybe they were sick, maybe they lived alone. Against my better judgment, I tried the doorknob. It turned easily. The inside of the house was even stranger. The air was stale, like the place hadn't been lived in for years. The furniture was covered in dust, and there was no TV, no decorations, nothing. Just an old wooden table in the center of the room, and on the walls, dozens of framed photos. I set the pizza down and, out of curiosity, glanced at the pictures. That's when I felt my stomach drop. They were all pictures of people, but not family photos, not happy memories. Every single one showed different delivery drivers. Some were holding pizzas, some were knocking on a door. But all of them had one thing in common. Their eyes were scratched out. I took a step back, my breathing heavy. That's when I noticed something else. One of the frames wasn't dusty like the others. It looked new. I stepped closer, and my heart nearly stopped. It was a photo of me, taken outside just minutes ago as I was walking up to the house. That's when I heard the sound. A low, guttural growl from upstairs. Slow, deliberate footsteps creaked above me. Someone, or something, was coming down. I bolted for the door, but the second I grabbed the knob, I felt ice-cold fingers wrap around my wrist. The whispering voice was no longer coming from the intercom. It was right behind me. "Thank you for delivering yourself." I don't remember exactly how I got out. All I know is that I yanked free, stumbled onto the porch, and sprinted to my car. As I peeled out of the driveway, I saw something in my rearview mirror. The porch light flickered, and for just a split second, I saw a tall, shadowy figure standing in the doorway. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me drive away. When I got back to the restaurant, I told my manager everything. He looked up the order in our system, but there was no record of it. No phone number, no address, nothing. It was like the order had never existed. I quit that job a week later. I don't deliver food anymore, and I never will again. Because sometimes the house you're delivering to is expecting more than just a pizza. Back in college, I worked as a pizza delivery driver. It wasn't the worst job. Decent tips, short shifts, and a lot of time driving around listening to music. Most nights were uneventful, but every once in a while, you'd get a weird customer. One night I got something much worse. It was late, almost midnight, when my manager asked if I could take one last order. I was tired, but I figured one more delivery wouldn't hurt. The order itself was strange. One large pizza with extra toppings. No specifics, just those two words. I asked if we should call the customer to clarify, but my manager just shrugged. It's late, just throw everything on it. So that's what we did. A little of everything. Pepperoni, sausage, mushrooms, olives. I boxed it up, grabbed the receipt, and headed out. I punched the address into my GPS, but something was off. The location wasn't in a normal neighborhood. It was on the outskirts of town, near an area I'd never delivered to before. As I drove, the streets became darker, emptier. The houses thinned out, replaced by overgrown lots and crumbling buildings. Then I reached it. Not a house, a diner. The place looked abandoned. The windows were covered in grime, the neon sign above the entrance flickering weakly. The parking lot was completely empty. No cars, no lights inside. I double-checked the address. It matched. I was about to call my manager when the front door creaked open. A man stepped into the doorway, standing just inside the dim light. He was old, late 60s, maybe 70s, with hollowed-out cheeks and skin that looked almost gray. He wore a grease-stained apron, his posture stiff and unnatural. For a long moment, he just stared at me. I hesitated before rolling down my window. Did you order a pizza?" The old man nodded slowly, then motioned for me to come inside. Every instinct told me to stay in the car, but I didn't want to argue with a customer and risk getting in trouble. So against my better judgment, I grabbed the pizza and stepped out. The second I walked through the door, I knew something was wrong. The air inside was thick with the stench of rotting meat. The boots were torn up, the floor sticky beneath my shoes. Dim yellow lights flickered overhead, casting unsettling shadows across the cracked tile. "Just put it on the counter," the old man rasped. I set the box down, trying to ignore the creeping unease crawling up my spine. "That'll be $18.50, I said quickly, already wanting to leave. The old man slid an envelope across the counter. "Tips in there," he muttered. I opened it, expecting cash. Instead, I found a handful of human teeth. I dropped the envelope immediately, my breath catching in my throat. I looked up at the old man, and he was grinning. His teeth, what was left of them, were jagged, rotting, like they had been ripped out and shoved back in. "Want to see where the extra toppings come from?" he whispered. Before I could react, something in the back of the diner moved. A wet, slithering sound, like raw meat sliding across tile. Then I heard it. Low, ragged breathing. I turned my head just enough to see into the kitchen, and my stomach twisted into knots. Behind the counter, something was crouched over a steel table. It looked human, but its skin was hanging loose, like it had been peeled off and stitched back together in the wrong places. Its long, bony fingers gripped a butcher's knife, slicing into a pile of raw, bloody meat stacked on a wooden cutting board. Meat that looked disturbingly human. The smell of blood and decay filled my lungs. My vision blurred, my pulse pounded. I backed away slowly, trying to keep my breathing steady. The old man was still grinning. "We like fresh toppings," he whispered. "Fresh is always better." I didn't wait. I turned and sprinted for the door. Behind me, I heard a scraping sound, the legs of a metal chair dragging against tile. Something was standing up. I bolted outside, fumbled with my keys, and threw myself into my car. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped them. As I peeled out of the parking lot, I made the mistake of looking in my rearview mirror. The old man was still standing in the doorway watching me, and behind him, that thing stood now, its head tilted, gripping the butcher's knife in one hand. I drove straight back to the shop, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I ran inside, my manager took one look at me and asked what the hell happened. I told him everything. The rotten diner, the old man, the thing in the kitchen. He frowned, then pulled up the order system. "Are you sure about the address?" he asked. I grabbed the receipt from my pocket and showed him. His face paled. "Dude, this can't be right." He turned the screen toward me. The order wasn't there. No record of it. No phone number. Nothing. I checked my own phone. The address wasn't in my GPS history. It was like the entire delivery had never happened. But when I reached into my pocket again, my fingers brushed against something sharp. I pulled out a single human tooth. I quit that job the next week. But sometimes, late at night, I still dream of that diner. The flickering sign, the rotting smell, and the thing in the kitchen, waiting for more extra toppings. A few years ago, I worked as a pizza delivery driver to make some extra cash. It wasn't a bad gig. Most nights were uneventful, and I got decent tips. But one night, I got an order that still makes my skin crawl. It was a Friday night, a little past 10 p.m. I had just finished a delivery when my manager asked me to take one last order before heading home. The address was in a quiet suburban neighborhood, about 15 minutes away. I drove out there, following my GPS through winding streets lined with nearly identical houses. It was the kind of neighborhood where everything looked safe and quiet, but something about it felt off. Maybe it was just the way the streetlights flickered, or how few cars were parked in the driveways. I finally reached the house, a dark blue two-story home at the end of a cul-de-sac. The porch light was on, but every other window was completely dark. It looked like no one was home. I grabbed the pizza and walked up to the door. I knocked twice. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. I checked the receipt to make sure I had the right place. The address was correct. Just as I was about to turn back to my car, I noticed something. The front door was slightly open. Not enough for me to see inside, but just enough to make me hesitate. At first, I figured maybe they just didn't hear me, so I knocked again. Nothing. Then from deep inside the house, I heard something. A faint shuffling sound, like someone moving across the floor. That's when I felt it. Someone was watching me. I turned my head slightly and caught something in my peripheral vision. There was a window to my right near the front door, and behind the glass I saw a figure. Tall, thin, completely motionless. I couldn't make out their face. They were standing in the darkness, just beyond the reach of the porch light. My stomach tightened. Why hadn't they answered the door? I forced a nervous smile and held up the pizza. Your order's here," I called out. The figure didn't move. They just stood there. At this point, every instinct was telling me to leave. But before I could turn away, something slammed against the door from the inside. I jumped back, nearly dropping the pizza. Then I heard it, a voice low and breathy, whispering from the other side of the door. "Wrong house." I felt a chill creep up my spine. I took a step back, then another. I glanced at the window again, but the figure was gone. The house was silent now. No movement, no whispering. Just the half-open door and the suffocating feeling that someone, or something, was still there, watching me. I didn't even bother going back to my car normally. I ran. I jumped in, locked the doors, and peeled out of there as fast as I could. As I turned onto the main road, I pulled out my phone to check the address again. And that's when I realized the address wasn't real. The numbers on the receipt didn't match any house on that street. It was like I had delivered to a place that didn't exist. I still don't know what happened that night. I don't know who or what was standing in that window. But one thing still haunts me. If that was the wrong house, who placed the order? Thank you for watching and taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more, please consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Your support means a lot and helps keep these stories coming. If you found this story interesting, feel free to leave a comment and share your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you'd like to support the channel even further, a like and share go a long way in helping spread these stories. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.